We interrupt this commercial break to bring you one of the most mind-bending horror films of 2018, and no, I don't mean A Christmas Prince 2. Hulu's Pooka is a bizarre and insanely enjoyable horror film from Blumhouse, part 3 of its Into the Dark series. And of course, it being December, Pooka centers around Christmas. So in this video, we're going to break down all the details to not only explain the ending, but find out who Pooka is, and a lot more interesting goodies that are easy to miss. The film starts off where it ends, flashing red and blue lights, and a Pooka doll amongst the flames of a wreckage we'll later find out is a car crash. A voice which we'll later find out is Melanie's repeats the phrase, "Look at all the pretty lights," the same phrase she tells Ty in the car just before the crash, a phrase which the Pooka doll remembers and repeats over and over when it malfunctions due to the crash. And it's also the same phrase the malfunctioning Pooka dolls repeat, which forces them to be recalled. We get our first glimpse of Wilson Klaus, our protagonist whose last name, which is only spoken once in the film, sounds eerily similar to Klaus or Claus, Santa Claus. The red and blue lights illuminate his face as the camera does this weird movement, almost suggesting he's laying on the pavement, and then turns upright. Bonus points if you noticed he's wearing the same outfit here in the beginning as he does in the end. The red and blue lights play a prominent role throughout the film and essentially signify two things: red, violence and anger, and blue, happiness and pleasure. This is easily seen when the Pooka doll's eyes turn red when he's naughty, and blue when he's nice. But more subtly is how the director and cinematographer play with lighting throughout the course of the movie. When Wilson leaves his apartment and hears the neighbor's music blaring, the same music which we hear in the car radio at the end by the way, her end of the hallway is red. Red also signifies danger, and it's only fitting that his neighbor's name happens to be Red. The walls of her apartment are even painted all red, and they both live on the 7th floor, which, if you're going by Dante's 7 Circles of Hell, number 7 is violence. Later on in the film, the red lights become more apparent, here in the bar, the backyard of Melanie's, behind him in his own apartment, the red hallway, the tree market, and finally in the background when Melanie utters the line, "Look at all the pretty lights," before the crash. Blue is equal parts as important, but doesn't show up as frequently. Blue signifies happiness and is more evident early on, especially when Wilson is courting Melanie. When he jerks off as Pooka, his eyes are blue, but is surrounded by smaller red lights, that of passion. But as we continue the story, we find Wilson down on his luck. He's a struggling actor, having newly moved to the city, and is desperately alone. But that's all about to change with the introduction of Pooka. Wilson recites lines for Charles Dickens's A Christmas Carol for an upcoming audition. In essence, Pooka is a modern twist on this story, about a man who has serious shortcomings, like A Christmas Carol's Ebenezer Scrooge, but by seeing what he's caused and what will happen to him, he changes for the better. This story is told by using the past, present, and future, just like how Ebenezer was visited by the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future. Wilson's past, however, involves meeting Melanie at the open house. You can even tell by the date here, October, that it's not even close to Christmas. When he first meets her, he talks about how he'd furnished the room with a big leather chair and abstract art. And guess what? When we see him in the present, his home has been adorned with a leather chair and abstract art. Wilson does get his job as Pooka, and it takes off, allowing him enough money to eventually buy his home and move in with Melanie and Ty. We know he was likely very successful as an actor, judging by this photo here of him on the red carpet. This success, however, got to his head and he became more and more temperamental, which we also see in the film as he gets increasingly angry toward Melanie, eventually culminating in him slapping a boy at Ty's birthday party for making fun of his son. Melanie asks him to leave and he does, but comes crawling back, asking for a second chance. And this is where we get into the present. This is the moment where everything can change, when Melanie either decides to take Wilson back or not. Wilson even tells her not to listen to alternate Wilson because he's learned how terrible he is. And this is also the key moment in Wilson's journey as our protagonist. He's learned the error of his ways by going through this journey and does not want to become what the future might hold. Just like how Scrooge decides to change after seeing what will happen to him. But with Wilson, he has a literal killing of the old self. In the scene where he chops the burning Pooka with an axe, it is the physical representation of him killing his old self, an old self that let fame, success, and his anger get the best of him. It's only by killing this part of him can he see the error of his ways, become a new man, and change the future. So it's no surprise that when Wilson sees the confrontation between Melanie and alternate Wilson, he tells Melanie not to trust him. but she does anyway. And this is important because Wilson's journey isn't completely over. He must confront the worst thing that could possibly happen to him, his heart of darkness, and he'll see this in his future, the death of his wife and child. This is the final moment where he'll truly learn that family is more important than money or fame. Pooka, our Christmas Carol ghost here, is like the ghost of Christmas future, showing him the future, standing by his side, and just like in Dickens' tale, he doesn't speak. And perhaps the reason both Pooka and the ghost of Christmas future don't speak is to show how Wilson has the free will to change the future. While the past can't be changed and the present is occurring, the future is still unknown. It is yet to be written. This is also a good time to mention that Pooka is derived from the Irish word puka for spirit or ghost. It's a creature from Celtic folklore considered to be the bringer of both good or bad fortune. They could take the shape of animals such as a hare, and in our case it looks just like that, with a pretty big exception. The eyes and mouth resemble that of a front car, hinting at the eventual car crash. But let's take a moment to discuss Red, the driver of the other vehicle. This crash wasn't just Wilson's fault for speeding. Notice here the speed limit of 35. But it was also Red's alcoholism. If you remember when the detective finds Red having jumped from the apartment, he calls it a suicide, that it was the bottle that got to her. And even in the first scene where Red welcomes Wilson into his apartment early in the morning, she asks him if he wants a drink. More tragic are the pictures of her and her daughter on the mantle, the daughter she herself killed in the accident. She even says she feared being alone for Christmas until Wilson arrived. Remember though that all these memories are jumbled and some are out of place and don't make sense. That's the point. Look how the Pooka producer is also the paramedic Wilson meets at the end. And there's no better indication of this than the guy I'll simply refer to as the family man. Now this is easy to miss, but also quite interesting. In the beginning of the film at the coffee shop, Wilson is asked if he could take a picture for this family. Take a look at this guy here. It's the same guy who Wilson will later ask to take a picture with his family. But it doesn't stop there. Guess who's interviewed about the Pooka recalls? The family man. And who beats up Wilson on the street later? Same guy. He also asks if there was a struggle outside the apartment where Red committed suicide, and now I'm not 100% sure on this one since I couldn't get a good look, but he could also be the other paramedic at the end here. Wilson's mind is a jumbled mess where some things are remembered and some things aren't. Just like how the producer said the Pooka doll decides what things are remembered and what aren't. That's why the timeline in this film is tough to follow and sometimes doesn't make any sense. But behind all this mystery and what some may find an ambiguous ending, I found a beautiful story about one man's acknowledgement of the past to change himself for the better. I hope you enjoyed this Ending Explained video. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and share. I make a ton of different types of videos like this, and I hope you'll check it out, and I'll be coming out with more in the future. For all my fans who know how I like to end my videos, remember, Daddy loves you very much.